and I am the Vice President of the Board of Directors for the DC State Fair. And on behalf of our board, partners, and wonderful volunteers, we thank you for joining us tonight. This is our first event of 2021. And if somehow you happened upon this event without getting one of our email blasts, please make sure after the event that you sign up for our emails or follow us on social media so you don't miss any future events in this series. The DC State Fair is a free showcase of the region's agriculture, culinary, and artistic talents. We strive to hold a creative, collaborative, innovative, and sustainable event that's accessible and inviting to all DC residents and visitors alike. This year, we're working to bring you the 12th annual DC State Fair, which will look different from our last fair. This year, we're going to focus on all of the making, baking, creating, and growing that we do in the district with the Contest Expo. The expo is going to take place this year on Sunday, September 12th at Martin Luther King Jr. Public Library. And we're super excited to bring contests back and see all of our participants in a safe and socially distant environment. So please be on the lookout for all the different contests we have to offer this year and how you can compete, participate, and judge some of our entries. We're always looking for people to come out and judge pies, cookies, cakes, chili, and more. And this year's no different. Some quick housekeeping before we get started. At the DC State Fair, we love your babies and your spouses and your pets, but out of respect for our speakers, we're going to keep all of our participants on mute tonight. We also have closed captioning for the event that you can turn on down at the bottom of your screen, and it's mostly accurate. We've tested it. You can also request a transcript of this event once it's concluded, as it is being recorded if you want to watch it again or share it with your social media. Also, a very special thank you to our partners tonight that Juana is going to introduce to you here shortly. They work every day to build a more equitable food system in DC and the region. Tonight, you're going to hear about a bunch of different programs and initiatives in the district to combat food deserts, hunger, and injustice, and how you can get involved to support DC urban agriculture and what all these groups are doing. Also, thank you to Juana and her education committee, who worked very hard to bring you this event and all of our future events in the Level Up series. You guys have truly assembled a great group of folks tonight. So without any further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Juana to kick us off. Enjoy, guys.
Thanks so much, Jamie, and hi everyone. My name is Juana. I'm a board member with the DC State Fair and also the chair of our education committee. As Jamie mentioned, tonight's event is part of a three-part series we are calling Level Up with the DC State Fair, because as participants, we hope you learn something new, gain a new skill, maybe you can get inspired to participate in that Context Expo in September. So, and for our partners that we are featuring throughout the series, we hope you are able to gain new supporters, advocates, volunteers to help you do the great work that you do every day. So our series is going to be based on the three thematic areas of the fair: urban agricultures today, then we'll have art, and then we'll have culinary art, all leading up to the big event in September. So for tonight's event, we are going to hear about food justice issues in the district and the connection with urban agriculture. We're also going to hear from three organizations as to how they are addressing the inequities built into our system. And we'll also hear about how you as community members can support urban agriculture in DC. And then we will also have time for your questions at the end. So to kick things off, I'm going to turn things over to Lauren from DC Greens. She's going to help us set the context by explaining what we mean when we say food justice and what sorts of issues are involved. So take it away, Lauren.
Great, thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be here. You can definitely go to, I was going to say, go to the next slide. Looking at that headshot's a lot. So, you know, it's a pleasure to be here. And, you know, I've been asked in this opening section to really talk about the question of what is food justice and what does it mean here in the district. I want to just start by saying we cannot talk about food justice without talking about racial justice, period. There is no food justice divorced from a deep reckoning with the history of unjust policies, and really at the core, food justice is about food sovereignty. It started as a concept really with the campesino movement, with workers wanting to have more control and autonomy over the land that they were farming. And actually, you can go to the next slide. And I want to put this up here for us all to look at. And I am going to read it. So, to advance food justice is to recognize and address the historical inequities and structural racism in our food system. I really want to make sure everybody is clear that it's not enough to talk about food justice as if it's a question of food access. This is a much deeper thing that requires historical context. A just food system is one in which power is held by BIPOC communities so that they can exercise their right to grow, sell, and eat healthy food at all times. People practicing food justice leads to an equitable local food system, self-reliant communities, and a healthy environment. And I think that, something that I've seen happen in the district and really across the country is that the concept of food justice really has started to be used as though it is only a question of food access. And here in the district, I think some of this started to happen around the grocery walk of 2017, when there was an effort by a lot of organizations together with residents in Ward 7 and 8 to really elevate the issue of the grocery gap. And, for those, many of you I know in the waiting room or who are now with us, were out in the streets with us walking from Giant Foods on Alabama Avenue to downtown Anacostia, which is a 45-minute walk. And, there was a collective cry for the city to recognize that access to healthy food is a basic human right. And food justice really became sort of a rallying cry around that. But I think what was a little bit lost is that conversation really was not just about, oh, we need another big box grocery store in the neighborhood. That's true. But the deeper thing, the food justice piece of it, was the push to try and come up with community solutions to address the food inequities that we see in the district. So, I think we have to be very careful when we use the term food justice because of the fact that it is now starting to be used and really appropriated and is slipping away from its meaning, its core meaning, which is really about making sure that communities have the ability to dictate their own solutions, that communities that are most impacted by the issues actually are the ones that are creating solutions. And I think honestly, the closest thing that we've seen to that currently are mutual aid groups that have developed and sort of gained a lot of momentum during COVID. That is a very pure expression of community sovereignty, communities coming up with solutions to be able to support themselves. And that's distinct from efforts that are also incredibly important to make sure that our policies are shifted to ensure that there's the possibility of community control. I think the work that Josh Singer, for example, has been doing inside of DPR to really ensure that our public lands are being opened up for folks who live in the communities adjacent to these lands to be able to actually farm them, grow food there, that there's sort of equal access to the land. But at the end of the day, when you boil that down, it's not the same thing as the kind of food sovereignty that has been pressed for by communities that were really shut out of a system. And I think that as we're thinking about the future of what food justice can mean in the district, I think we need to be very eyes open and ensure that there isn't a kind of series of appropriations of that concept. You can go to the next slide. It's really just a blank slide with my contact, but I'll stay here. DC Greens we called ourselves Food Justification a while. And we have a strategic plan that's coming out now. We're really shifting from using that as our central concept. We're obviously supportive of moving policies that result in community control of land, that result in resource transfer who are most impacted, to ensure that who have the most at stake in a set of questions to actually shape policy and programs. But what we're starting to do now is to call ourselves a health equity organization that's working to build a just and resilient food system. And we're choosing that language very carefully, because I think, you know, as a white leader of this organization, you know, for me to claim that our work is primarily about food sovereignty, I don't think that that's accurate. I think that, you know, we are doing everything that we can to ensure that we're shifting policies and that we're shifting resources to communities that are most impacted. And, you know, some of the things that I think are really important areas for all of us to be looking at in that realm are the work that is happening with the Good Food Purchasing Program to shift institutional purchasing towards sourcing from more BIPOC farmers in the area. Again, there's the work that Josh has been doing with DPR, and we're very fortunate to be in close partnership with DPR around a new urban agriculture site that we're opening in Oxen Run Park in Ward 8 in Congress Heights, called The Well. But we're being very conscious in that work to ensure that DC Green's role is really one of resource transfer, and that the space itself, the agenda, the entire space is run by members of the Bellevue, Congress Heights, and Washington Highlands community who know what is best for them in terms of urban agriculture, what they want to grow, how they want to sell things, and what the resources, how those resources should stay in their own community. There's very important food sovereignty work happening right now with a set of folks in Ward 8 who've been starting a community co-op and have been working on that for many years. There's also really important dialogues happening right now around nutrition equity and, you know, prison food, whether we should be increasing the nutritional standards that are served in our correctional facilities, that are served in our family shelters. You know, I think there's a lot of work that can be done to ensure that there is access to healthy food and that policies are shifted to right structural and historical wrongs. But I don't believe that we should be naming that food justice out of the gate. I think it's important that sort of the how of that work is just as important as the what. And we need to be sure that all of this work is being led and directed by communities that are most impacted. And, you know, I'll say, I also think that, you know, we're at a stage where we should be questioning whether a white woman should be giving this address. And I'll say I've had a lot of conflicted feelings about that. But I hope that, you know, I've been able to offer something of value. And I will offer that, you know, for white people that are working in this movement, it is imperative that we are self-aware and are working to be allies and in the service and not gatekeepers. And that is, you know, work that I'm attempting to do every day. And I hope that you'll all join me in that work, because I think at the end of the day, it's really time for white people to step back and let food sovereignty actually be what it can be. So I'll stop there.
Thank you so much, Lauren. Thanks for unpacking all the components that are in the large box of food justice and how people interpret that and what the historical roots are there. So we'll now shift to our roundtable portion of the event, where we will hear from 3 organizations, which will all share their unique perspectives on how their work ties into the challenges and the issues Lauren just highlighted, and share their thoughts on how the district can reach towards a more equitable, just food system. So first, we will hear from Thomas at Bertie, Backus Urban Food Hub. Take it away, Thomas.
Cool. Good evening, everybody. It's always a daunting task to follow Lauren and whenever I'm speaking. So we'll bring the energy, hopefully. My name is Thomas Wheet. I manage the Bertie Backus Food Hub, which is one of UDC's, the University of the District of Columbia's 5 food hubs that we have around the city. This one is in Fort Totten, so it's Ward 5, which is one of the historically food insecure wards that we have in the city. The site itself is 5,000 square feet of research facility. It's a mixture of hydroponic and aquaponic space. So I won't get in the weeds too much, but it's basically soilless growing. So the image on this slide is one of those greenhouses utilizing NFTs and a hydroponic hoop house. So we grow vertically and year round. On site, we also have a native plant nursery, which is 2,500 square feet of native plant propagation. UDC is in partnership with DPR and DOEE. And so when they're looking to do installations around the city and looking to utilize native plant species to kind of repopulate or kind of build those numbers, we have native plants that are in seeding and propagation stage for them to use whenever they need it. We're also getting a FRESHFARM shipping container, which is a 40 by 10 shipping container, fully decked out and automated for hydroponic growing as well. We have a community garden on site. So that's open to all Ward 5 community members. And so that gives them a space to be able to come and obviously grow their own food and sell it and eat it, distribute it kind of however they want to. And then lastly on site, we have a commercial kitchen, which will be for Ward 5 residents, but also will be focused on supporting, restaurateurs and entrepreneurs that would have difficulty getting a brick and mortar kitchen space to be able to launch their business. This will be a site where they can potentially rent out space and then do all the stuff that they would do, but wouldn't have to kind of put up that upfront investment. So a lot of things happening at that specific site. But again, my main focus is the research coming out of the hydroponic and aquaponic facility. Juana, if you could go to the next slide for me. So I think our general role in DC's food system is in many ways similar to kind of urban ag's role in general. I think there's a huge kind of demystifying process that's occurring with people's food, especially in urban environments. I think people are extremely disconnected just from agriculture in general. We kind of show up at a grocery store and we expect that there will just be food there. So I think urban ag and Bertie Backus kind of specifically is kind of helping build some awareness in people's minds about, where their food comes from, how it's grown, who grows it, what people have, who has access to it, kind of all of those questions that often go unanswered because our current ag system is so much kind of contained in a black box. The chart on the left kind of is a breakdown that I've seen before of kind of what a food chain can be. And so I think Bertie Backus is probably up in that kind of that second level from the top. Right. So we are a farm, but we also distribute food directly. So we're trying to shorten that farm to table distance. I think kind of more holistically, and this touches to a lot of what Lauren was talking about in terms of food justice. We're really trying to broaden access to healthy foods. There's a narrative in the ag and kind of food world that you have to be wealthy to be healthy. So we are trying to directly combat that understanding. So my food is completely donated to the nonprofits and given away to community members. I have the luxury of doing so because I'm funded through the government, but we're really trying to make sure that food that is already the citizens' foods, right? Because it's paid for by tax dollars, is going back to those who are most vulnerable and most in need. So, we're able to kind of broaden access to healthy foods. We also offer volunteer opportunities. So that's to anybody in DC, but we do try to make sure that we're highlighting opportunities to Ward 5 community members as well. And then in tandem, since we are a university, the Bertie Backus Food Hub pairs with a lot of the educational programming that's already exists. So whether it's the Master Gardeners classes or the native plant classes that we have, or jobs training programs that UDC's offers, we kind of build that into the programming for Bertie Backus. So we try to make sure that we're kind of taking a holistic approach, making sure that we are almost taking that teach a man to fish kind of mindset, right? Where we can both educate people at a 20,000-foot view of what it takes to be food sovereign or food secure, or develop a community that has access to healthy foods. But we want to go one step further and really make sure that we're not just the gatekeepers, that we're actually kind of passing the baton to people to be able to take the knowledge they're learning and then go do with it as they will. I do think specifically, and I'll just mention this slightly, I know I threw out aquaponics and hydroponics. We are a controlled environment agriculture production site. So specifically for DC's food system, I do think that Bertie, Backus and several other food hubs that we have, and there's a couple hydroponic companies in DC as well, it's kind of pushing the bounds of what urban agriculture is kind of thought of. I think there's a role for every type of production. So I certainly wouldn't say that controlled environment ag is the end all be all, but I think that to kind of reach a lot of the goals that we're all talking about and we're all working towards, it's going to require a mixture of production methods. And so I think that controlled environment ag, though it's a viable one, is one that's probably a bit misunderstood, pretty unknown, and isn't heavily utilized. So I think a lot of the research that we're doing and the data that we're collecting will hopefully build a stronger argument for why this type of method is helpful in a lot of, especially smaller, urban, more dense populations. The last thing I'll say, and then I swear I'll stop talking. I think that the site itself is also building upon momentum that's happening across the country and honestly globally in terms of trying to make agriculture more sustainable. Whether it's policies getting passed through the White House and this administration, the creation of the Department of Urban Ag and Innovative Production at the USDA, or just the focus on regenerative agriculture as a whole, I think that there is an increasing awareness of the role that agriculture can play in both kind of climate change mitigation, but also building a more equitable society. And so Bertie, Backus, and hopefully the work that we're doing, though it's extremely small in the scheme of things, is building upon that narrative that food touches everybody and in many ways everything on this planet. And so finding ways to be able to provide, but to do so justly, to do so equitably, to do so sustainably is extremely important. So if we go to the next slide, it's just a kind of a wrap up. That's my contact information. The food hub, again, is at the Bertie, Backus Community College in Fort Totten. And feel free to shoot me an email or reach out to Causes, which is the website right there.
Thanks so much, Thomas. I know we gave you all the arduous task of putting in all the awesome stuff you're doing into little 5-minute tidbit. So thank you so much for touching so. No, that was great. And we'll now switch gears to Alana from Dreaming Out Loud to tell us about their work.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. Thank you so much for inviting us to this amazing panel. I already feel so juiced up. I hope everyone's catching all these gems that are being dropped because we got to cash in and make this change happen. So thank you for putting this on. I'm hyped. Can you tell? Okay, so I'm Alana. I'm a food hub assistant at Dreaming Out Loud. We were created in 2008 on April 24th. So we just had our 13th birthday a few days ago. So we've come a long way, and there's still a long way to go, but I'm just happy to have like-minded people in here to keep it moving. So you can go to the next slide. Yeah, that's me. Okay. I've been a part of Dreaming Out Loud for about 8 months now, and I'm not a native Washingtonian, but my parents are. They were both born and raised here in DC, and I have family here. So I would grow up summertime coming to visit the city. And even back then, 80s, 90s, I noticed that there were a bunch of places where there weren't food. I've been obsessed with food since I was a child. And I was like, where's a grocery store? But there's corner stores and liquor stores everywhere. Like, this is a 12-year-old noticing this in the 90s, and it's still happening today. So it's pretty serendipitous. I've been in food my whole life, front of house, back of house, and to be at this point where I'm at this intersection of knowing how it's being controlled and feeling empowered to take reign of it is is incredible. So yes, go to the next slide. All right, so our mission is to create economic opportunities for the DC metro region's marginalized communities through building a healthy, equitable food system. So we've said equitable a lot, and it's just so important to know that people just need access. Like Thomas had said before, it's like this knowledge, it's like this thought of, oh, people, you're healthy if you're wealthy, and they don't want to eat fresh produce at all. And that's absolutely not the case. So every department that we have within Dreaming Out Loud is focused on empowering every aspect of the food system. So that's the next slide. All right, so we're composed of 4 different categories. So first is the food hub. So this basically creates channels of food distribution through wholesale purchasing for organizations, institutions, and we tap into local farms, primarily Black farms, and food producers in the area, just to uplift them, increase their revenue, and to also give them a genuine point of sale. We're definitely not trying to do underhanded deals here. No, we are making sure that their businesses can also stay afloat. So as a food hub assistant, I am a touch point from as soon as we get a delivery to wherever it goes. We do quality control, we pack CSA produce bags, we connect with the community, we do calls to check and see how things were going, we do outreach. It is, we are like the soldiers going out there and making it happen. I also work with the communications team for our upcoming Black Farm CSA. Very excited about that, and more on that later. So we also have the farm at Kelly Miller. It is a 2-acre plot of land, just a beautiful oasis tucked away right behind Kelly Miller Middle School. And we use it as our hub to grow food. It's growing so much food right now, and we use that food for our CSA program. We also have educational opportunities, so people can come onto the farm through volunteer hours and learn more about the land and how lush and prosperous it can be just right here in this area. And people young and old, we have senior garden beds there, so everyone can just come and tap back into nature. And it's a great partnership that we have with DC Department of Parks and Rec. And yeah, it's 3 years old, and it is just lush and blooming, and we're so proud of it. We also have our dream program. What's that? So this is our food entrepreneur program, and we really focus on food entrepreneurs in wards 7 and 8. And it's basically a 16-week program that has coaches, industry experts, and everybody at every level of the industry to help them know the ins and outs of their business, because statistics show that Black businesses don't stay afloat as well, but it's not for lack of trying. It's usually lack of access, lack of knowledge, but we have the gumption, and it's just all about having that hand to hold you and to guide you in the right direction. So that's our dream program. And then advocacy, like Lauren was saying at the beginning, and Thomas, and what you will hear throughout the rest of this program, it all has to keep moving. It is a tough mountain to climb, but we are a part of the DC Food Policy Council, and through different channels of advocacy, we're able to draft, propose, and really push legislation forward on making these changes happen. But we can't just rely on that. We gotta keep it moving through our own programming as well. So yeah, you can go to the next slide.
Thank you so much, Alana. I hope you all are getting quick tidbit of all the awesome stuff going on, and we're dropping some links in the chat where you can dig a little bit deeper, and of course reach out to any of our presenters today for more information, show up at their farms, help them out. For our third speaker here in this roundtable, we have Tailor from FRESHFARM FoodPrints to explain this unique program.
Thank you so much for turning it over to me, Juana. I'm going to try and really stay under my time because I know people probably have lots of questions that we want to get to. So first of all, my name is Tailor Coble. I've been with FRESHFARM for about 3 years now. I'm just going to give a quick overview of what the organization does, and then we'll jump into the other questions. So FRESHFARM promotes sustainable agriculture and improves food access and equity in the Mid-Atlantic region. So we have a network of over 30 farmers markets across the DC, Maryland, and Virginia region. We have our pop-up food hub that's increasing food access to low-income communities through our partnerships with community-based organizations, healthcare entities, childcare centers, schools, and a bunch of other partners. And then specifically, I'm a lead teacher with our FoodPrints program, which provides food and gardening education in partnership with 16 DCPS schools across the city. And so this year I stepped into a new role where I'm working really closely with the Pop-Up Food Hub and FoodPrints. Some of you may know Community Food Works and FRESHFARM are now one organization, and it's really awesome because Community Food Works had really mastered like the farmers connection and the food access piece. And then FoodPrints and FRESHFARM, we had the food and gardening education with our curriculum, and then also our farmers markets. So now that we're all together, we're really trying to focus on providing food access and education all the time in tandem. We can go to the next slide. So FRESHFARM FoodPrints. FoodPrints is an academic approach to growing healthy students through cooking and gardening. So the FoodPrints program, we have a curriculum that we developed ourselves in partnership with the DCPS curriculum. So every FoodPrints lesson has 4 pillars. We always focus on growing, cooking, eating, and learning. And obviously all those things are hand in hand. One of the things that FoodPrints does, or I guess one of the ways that I view FoodPrints' role in the food system is I'm a food and gardening educator. I think that one of the best ways that we can improve our food system and move towards a more equitable and just food system is the education piece. Educating the next generation of eaters, farmers, and consumers. Kind of like Thomas was alluding to in the beginning, most people lack a fundamental understanding of where our food comes from. And if you don't understand where our food comes from, you can't really understand your role in the food system. And so this idea of what steps need to be taken to achieve a just food system in DC. I think first I'll start with what our organization is doing. It's so important to meet students and families where they are in terms of what they're eating, where they're sourcing their food from. It's so important to keep in mind that the inequities around access go deeper than somebody's personal choice. Also, because we're exposing Black and Brown communities to farming, which is something that a lot of people are disenfranchised from, we also recognize that ecophilia is real. If you don't want to touch the dirt, if you're not ready to experiment with worms, we're not going to push you out of your comfort zone. Similarly, that's how we approach food education. I think there's a lot of demonizing around, you should eat local, you should eat organic, and sometimes we don't talk about the reasons why people aren't doing that. Access, money, stigmas around who eating healthy is, just to name a few. So one of the things that I was thinking about in terms of how can we achieve a more just food system in DC, kind of going back to what Lauren was saying earlier, really trying to pass the torch. Communities know what they need to be healthy. Communities know what they need to prosper and be successful. We need to stop being gatekeepers of funds, of spaces, of all things like that, and really turn things back over to the community. Also just continuing to advocate for underserved communities, and breaking down barriers to access, and investing more in historically under-resourced communities. So making spaces like farmers markets more inclusive, giving tools like land, money, and education to encourage and empower people to grow their own food. Just a few ideas that I had. And then you can go to the next slide. If you are interested in accessing FoodPrints curriculum, our recipes, our virtual resources, you can check out our website. We also have a pretty poppin' Instagram and Twitter. And if you have any questions about how to get in touch, feel free to email the Hello Fresh Farm or email me.
Thanks so much, Taylor. I'm sure we'll get a lot of questions for you all in a little bit here. First, we are going to switch gears and share a video with you all about spotlighting an urban farm in the district, Letterer Gardens. You'll notice Josh Singer in the video, who we'll hear from afterwards, and it just showcases yet another example, aside from those we've heard, of building out some solutions to the inequities and challenges that Lauren touched us off with. So let's play the video for you. All right, so we might be able to hear more about Letterer Gardens with our next speaker here, Josh. He's going to tell us about some of the ways that you all as community members can support urban agriculture in the district. And so we will turn to him next. Take it away, Josh.
Good morning, everyone. Today, we're going to be doing something really cool where we're taking...
There we go.
Oh, well, thank you so much for making that video.
Exactly what we're doing with it.
Is that, can you hear me all right? Okay.
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you all for having me. And this is a great presentation. And thanks for all the amazing speakers for taking the time out to let us know all the amazing work you're all doing. So I'm Josh Singer. I'm a DC Parks and Rec Community Garden Specialist. So among a couple other, groups that we work with, I work on building urban ag sites like urban farms, gardens, communal farms, which I'll talk about in a second, and also a lot of support systems. Like we do a lot of like training. We have greenhouse cooperatives, compost cooperatives, tool shares, all whole bunch of different programs to kind of help people grow as much food as possible. So I'll talk a little bit about what we do. I like to say that we're building, what we're trying to do is we're trying to build local food economies. We're not just growing food, but we're also, and kind of touch on what Lauren was saying with food sovereignty, we're trying to create these local food systems where every step of this food system is found in the community and controlled by the community, and has access to all community members. So you want to turn the next slide? Cool. So this is kind of what all the different aspects that we work on. So we try and we start with like community training. We do a lot of like courses and now all webinars, a lot of recorded webinars. We have like 100, over 100 classes all recorded for anyone to watch right now since the pandemic hit. And we also create a lot of resource networks as well, because there's a lot of great, programs and jobs and grants, but no one tends to hear about them. So we're trying to get, that access and the information out to the communities. But we're also trying to, do production farming as well, from gardens to production farms to partner farms to communal farms to rooftop farms, so all different kinds of things. And then we're trying to also, once you grow the food, we're trying to give a lot of options. Not just like, you can sell in the market, but you can also, we're building, commercial kitchens and community incubator spaces and where people can actually add value to these, create, meals and things like that can actually bring in more fun, more value than just selling the produce, and can also create more jobs and kind of support small scale businesses. And also we're trying to create avenues of getting that food into the community, from like markets to CSAs. So also working on, community stores and community cooperative, food markets located on our urban ag sites and our rec centers. And then lastly, we work on like compost cooperatives and all the different ways to kind of collect resources and food recovery and things like that, and get those resources. Don't let them just go to the dump, but try to get it back into this local food system, making jobs and making resources and as well. So I'm not going to go into all of these, but I'm just going to highlight 2 programs in the short time that we have. So if you want to turn the slide. The first one is in the community training. If you want to hit the slide again. Cool. So one of the things that we try to do, as I was mentioning, is we try to make these community resource networks. Because as I said, there's so many amazing things happening in DC around food justice and food access and urban ag, and so many people have no idea that they even exist. So we're trying to bring more awareness to all these things in DC. So we started a bunch of us started about a decade ago the DC Urban Ag Network, the DUG Network, where you can go to this website dugnetwork.org. You'll find hundreds of different places where to garden, where to find farms that can volunteer at, where to find compost, where to all these different things around the city. You can find these and access these resources. And we also do this this newsletter every 2 weeks. Is really long, ugly newsletter, but it's like full of so much good stuff happening in DC. Like 1 or 2 dozen job openings every 2 weeks, grants, trainings, programs, things like that. So if anyone's interested in signing up for that, definitely you can sign up on the front page of the DUG network. And on top of that, I think Lauren was kind of emphasizing too that food justice isn't just food access. It's so much more. And that's why we created a bunch of us have been working on these other resource networks as well, like the People School of DC, where this is a social justice resource hub for DC. So if you want to get involved with housing, or want to get involved in immigration, all these things, because I mean there's no food justice without housing justice, without immigration justice, without dismantling systems of oppression, from white supremacy to patriarchy to capitalism to decolonization, to actually understanding our history, not the one that was taught to us. So all this stuff it needs to be included with food justice, and it can seem daunting, at times, especially if we haven't heard a lot about a lot of it. But a lot of this is just about finding the people already doing the work and getting connected, and it's really important too, because I have, again, what Lauren was talking about. We've already seen the greenwashing of this term food justice, and we saw that with urban ag last decade. They would try to scoop. Oh, don't worry about housing. Let's just build a garden, and so we already see that now. We see people say, well, let's just skip all this other stuff and call it food justice. So I think it's on all of us to kind of hold each other accountable and hold organizations accountable and be like, well, if you're going to use this term, you need to also care about housing. You need to care about immigration. You need to care about so many other things that they are all connected, and all create this environment of these communities where one of the main outcomes is they don't have access to healthy food. So that's really important to kind of expand on that. And it's a long process. You don't need to figure it out all at once, but we all need to be working on this, and so that's why we created People School of DC, has lots of different resources on how to actually get involved with lots of different ways in DC. And we're always looking for volunteers as well. If you're wanting to help us try to find more ways to for sure, we always need help with websites. and resource collection. If you want to turn the slide. Also, on the Doug Network, that's where we house all of our recordings. So when COVID hit, we were right in the middle of doing a training course, and we just I bought a Zoom account and did what everyone else did and just did a crash course and had lots of hiccups for a couple of weeks, but we figured it all out. And now we've just been pumping out these classes and recording them. So if you want to learn, all this stuff and more, you just go to DougNetwork.org and you can learn all you need to know about growing food and about food justice, about local initiatives, international initiatives and growing mushrooms and foraging and all that stuff. So I'll turn the slide. All right, so the second thing I'm going to talk about is just our food production part. And I'm just going to talk about one program. What that Letter of Gardens was one of them, called Communal Farms. If you want to turn the slide on that. So we have, this is the new program, actually came out with COVID. We had just got done building this rooftop farm at the new Edgewood Rec Center. It's about small, like 1/4 acres farm. It's really cool. We were going to do like a education teaching garden. And then COVID hit the same month that it opened up and we had all these seedlings and stuff. So we decided we're just going to grow a bunch of food and just give it away. Especially, everyone, I don't need to talk about the insecurities that have been merging, been getting perpetuating, getting worse. There was insecurities before COVID, but now just how horrific, some of these food insecurities are in our failed food system. So we decided just to grow a bunch of food on this rooftop farm. We invited people to come in, masked and everything, and we did some hands-on learning. And we developed this model called a communal farm, which is really about kind of going back to the commons, something that capitalism kind of destroyed, is this idea of shared community resources of and so we're trying to create these farms where basically, because we oversell urban ag sometimes. We're like, hey, here's some seeds and compost, go feed your entire neighborhood and make a living, but it's really hard sometimes. Anyone could do it. You just gotta, you gotta, spend a couple years really figuring it out. So what we do with this is instead anyone can come. We may ensure, DPR ensures that they're productive farms, and then people can come and they can learn, they can volunteer, they can get hands-on experience, they can harvest whatever they want, and then we have weekly produce giveaways where we give out, packages of produce. And on this little farm last year, we actually gave away about 1,200 pounds into the local community, and the program was really successful. So we expanded this to Letter of Gardens. Letter of Gardens was this 50-year-old, old youth garden that used to be productive, and then had some horrific flooding issues. So we spent all this spring, like hundreds of hours of digging French drains and wheelbarrowing topsoil and stuff. And we really did redesign this farm into a production farm, and where we're going to do the same concept. People can come and they can learn how to grow, hands-on experience. They can harvest what they want, and then we'll do weekly produce giveaways, starting in probably mid to late May. And we're also working on bringing other partners as well. This isn't official yet, but we're trying to work this out. Like the Fresh Food Factory is looking to do like these mobile, grocery co-ops and these shipping containers, and we're trying to bring in that and different other components and make this like this universal kind of like I said, local food system where you're not just growing food, but you have markets, you have all this other things happening. And yeah, if you want to turn the next slide. And that's basically it. There's a whole bunch of other programs as well. If anyone has any questions, they can email me. This is actually from an old slide. This was like more exciting when it just happened, but because I never heard what a second gentleman was, now, but Doug Imhoff, the second gentleman, actually visited Dreaming Out Loud, which is really cool. It kind of shows an initiative that, one, it shows just how amazing Dreaming Out Loud and what they've done to this property. This is from our partner Urban Farm program, where we basically just give, great organizations like Dreaming Out Loud and City Blossoms and DC Greens access to land. If we have some funding, great, but a lot of times we don't have funding. We give them access and just the ability to kind of run with it. And if anyone's been out there, just in what they've done in the last 3 years, it's amazing. And to have the second gentleman come out to visit it, that's hopeful that we can keep the federal government excited about food justice. Cool.
Thanks so much, Josh. Well, in the last 10-ish minutes here, we want to give you all, now that you've had a lot of information thrown at you, throw some information back to our speakers right now and ask those questions. Maggie, my fellow board member, is going to facilitate the Q&A here. She's been doing a wonderful job with the screen share. Thank you, Maggie. And so feel free to put in any questions in the chat box, either directly to Maggie Downing or to everyone. I think you should be able to chat to everyone. So if you have any questions, put them in there.
Thanks, Juana. And maybe while we're waiting for folks to submit their questions, I can sort of ask one of my own of each of our speakers. Alana, I think you gave us a little bit of your background and how you got into this work, but I would love to hear from all of our speakers of, what led you to where you are in your careers today? How did you end up in this world? Thomas,
I'm happy to, I'll start. I kind of just came about it by happenstance in undergrad. I had some more free time on my hands, and I saw a buddy at the UVA farm kind of doing his thing, and I went out and I just was out there for a couple hours, and something felt, I was barefoot and I was farming, and I just remember feeling like extremely connected to the ground, and I won't make this too woo-woo, but it just felt correct. It just felt like super, I don't know, primal. And like, they just felt like there's this obvious connection to like seeing Mother Earth provide you nutrients. And I was kind of hooked from there. But after undergrad, I kind of did other jobs and consulting. So it took me a while to kind of fully come back to that initial, I guess, feeling and build a career in it. But it took a while. I'm from DC, so it wasn't until college I even was exposed to agriculture. And then it wasn't until later on that I was able to kind of move into this industry full-time and professionally.
For me, can you hear me or no? Can you hear me? I was working at Sesame Street, and I was commuting up to New York, and I picked up Omnivore's Dilemma in, at like Penn Station for my commute, and which, if you haven't read, that's Michael Pollan's book. And this is, maybe 15 years ago now. So this was like a hot bestseller that had just come out. And my mind was blown. I had never thought about the food system before. It was before sort of everybody was talking about it everywhere. This is pre-Obama election. And, I was going on maternity leave, and I decided, well, I should start a farmer's market in my neighborhood while I'm on maternity leave. And somebody in my neighborhood, who's now my co-founder, but she was a teacher at Bancroft Elementary School. That was the school that was invited to plant the first White House garden. So she got this incredible opportunity to go and plant the White House garden with Michelle Obama. And I was like freaking out. And she said, "You are more excited about this than any other human in my life, including my husband. We should talk more." And we ended up founding DC Greens, which, and at that time there was all of these, like, there was no Food Policy Council. It was, collections of organizations like the DC Farmers Market Collaborative, the DC Schoolyard Greening Consortium, and everybody wanted to be collaborating. But there was nobody who had the time to actually do that work of collaboration. And that's where we found ourselves kind of raising our hands, and DC Greens really grew from there.
Love a mid-career pivot. That's such a great story. So we had a question here for folks who work full-time, but who are really interested in these issues. What's a good way for them to get involved? Josh, do you want to, maybe you get some volunteer?
Yeah, I guess, that's one thing. So definitely, yeah, if you're, working full time, if you're working, more than full time, having, raising kids, all that stuff, it can be kind of daunting where to get started. And that's one reason why we created these resource networks, the Doug Network, the People School, and all these, so that people can kind of just kind of access it and see, like, for example, like the Doug Network newsletter, that would be a great way to start. Because you'll hear about all these different opportunities and all these ways to connect every 2 weeks, and eventually you're gonna, some free time is going to match up with, that. So I think the first one is just kind of, getting on the Doug newsletter, getting on DC Green's newsletter, UDC's newsletter, get on all these organizations' newsletters, and just to kind of map out and hear what's happening. And then when you have some time, in your crazy life, you know what to do, and you're not like searching for it.
That's great. We've got some questions here about policy. One specifically about opinions on recent nutrition equity bill proposed by Councilmember Nadeau. Does anybody want to speak to that? Lauren, I think it was directed right at you, so why don't you take that one?
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, the Nutrition Equity Amendment Act was recently put forward by Councilmember Nadeau with 6 other council members supporting. What this bill does is that it improves nutrition standards at family shelters. It actually creates some standards at family shelters and then funds the ability for the city to actually improve those nutrition standards. It puts $3.5 million a year into hands-on food education, like what Tailor was sharing at elementary schools. It puts $5 million a year into food as medicine interventions, like the produce prescription program, medically tailored home delivered meals, really ways to integrate access to healthy food into the healthcare system. It puts money into chronic disease self-management classes in the community, as well as nutrition education opportunities. It puts money into the city's Nourish DC fund, which gives financial resources to Black-owned food businesses east of the Anacostia River. It does a lot, and it also puts a 1.5 cent tax per ounce on sugar-sweetened beverages, which is a nutrition equity catalyst tax. So DC Greens is in support of this legislation. The soda industry has a history of targeting communities of color. I see that as a very strong food injustice. I think, sugar sweetened beverages are the leading contributor to diabetes. Diabetes is, 5 times more prevalent in Ward 8 than it is in Ward 3. And the targeted marketing that is meted out on communities of color, actually white teenagers see 7 ads a day for soda and junk food, and Black teenagers see 17 ads a day because of targeted marketing, because of the investments that this industry has made in profiting off of Black sickness and death. And so we are in support of this legislation. We are shoulder to shoulder with Don't Mute My Health, with the Ward 7 Health Alliance Network, and with quite a lot of health professionals that are really tired of the industry coming and reaping benefits. And then what they tend to do is, actually, after that legislation started, they launched this is the beverage industry launched something called the Alliance for an Affordable DC, which is it's called astroturfing. It's a fake grassroots organization. And actually the only thing on their platform for an affordable DC was don't pass a sugar sweetened beverage tax. Nothing about housing, nothing about any of the actual real. So the level of exploitation that we see of people's actual real issues and concerns, I find appalling. And so, yes, if you are interested in supporting this legislation, there will be a hearing, probably May 19th or 20th. This has the opportunity to be an incredibly important source of funding for the range of activities that all of us are talking about. And I'd be happy to answer more questions if anyone wants to send me an email. This is going to be, this is the first time there has been a public hearing on this topic since 2010. When there was a sales tax passed on soda that actually has funded the entire Healthy Schools Act, the Healthy Amendment Act, the WIC Expansion Act. And this public hearing is going to be a big deal, and the industry is going to come out in full force. So I'll stop there.
Thank you, Lauren. I know several of you spoke about gatekeeping within these worlds in your earlier remarks. And I was wondering, we had a question here about how do we shift that culture away from gatekeeping within the food justice movement? Does anybody want to speak to that?
This might be a question for me again. I mean, others are welcome to take it too. And I've certainly, Josh has been a real a real model for a lot of us for a very long time. So in doing really important work of going inside of major government institutions and ensuring that those institutions are opening their doors and using their dollars to actually resource folks who are most in need of those dollars and have the solutions for themselves. So I really want to applaud Josh. I've watched him. I've had the honor of working alongside him and sort of in overlapping circles for over a decade now. And it's tremendous what he's done to shift the culture of DPR and to shift the culture of sort of the government entities as it relates to urban agriculture. And I'll say from my position, it ends up being a matter of being very aware of my institutional power and my white privilege, and recognizing that it is my job to be a conduit and use the access that I have to ensure that other people have access when there's decision making happening. And I also think it is about genuine resource transfer. I mean, it is, a big part of my job is fundraising for my organization. And I am constantly, our whole development department is, we're actually writing out a set of, ways that you can execute resource transfer to BIPOC-led organizations and individuals. And there's a lot of ways to do it. There's direct introductions, there's lifting up other organizations on your social media. There's a lot of ways. I mean, even in the well, which we're building, when Jaren started the job, I made it very clear to her, and she lives 6 blocks from the site in Bellevue. I said, this is your project. You are in charge. You are making the decisions, and I'm here to get you the resources that you need. And, we've made a commitment that we're not going to be extracting any dollars from anything grown on site, that every dollar will circulate back into the community. And we're trying to find partnerships to ensure that our institutional power is shared.
Great. So I know we're a little bit over on time, but I just wanted to make sure each of our speakers had a chance. If you saw another question in the chat you wanted to make sure we addressed, or if you had any final thoughts you wanted to share, responses to anything from tonight, I just wanted to give you that chance before we close things out. Everybody?
Oh, I just wanted
go ahead.
Just a quick point on the gatekeeping question. And I appreciate Lauren and Josh for both calling a spade and just keeping it 100 with saying that maybe white people shouldn't be the face of advocating for these changes because it is not affecting them at the gravity that it's affecting Black people and brown people. Is I was not ready to hear that today. I was like, whoa. So I think just taking off the veil of romanticizing urban agriculture, like what Josh had mentioned earlier. People made these gardens and farms because they need food. It's not like an after school project, and it's not like this lofty idea. It's because they don't have access any other way. It's food, it's sustenance. It's not like some form of pageantry here. So I appreciate you guys for just airing it out like that, because I'm just thinking people look at it like, wow, this is so cute, and it's like, my people are malnourished because there are strategic ways of not giving people what they need and limited access. When they show up time and time again, like DC has the highest rate of senior hunger. What does that mean? Like our seniors are the hungriest in the nation here in DC. And they are the people that show up time and time again at our farmers markets, will sit on the phone with us and talk about their day. Will come to our the senior gardens that we have at Kelly Miller, and it speaks so much that this city that's so rich and bustling, and you're like, oh wow, look at 14th Street, and it's like, we have senior hunger. Like, I can't enjoy a boozy brunch and think about that. So, thanks.
Just to underscore what you're saying a little more, I mean, I think we need to really look at that. I mean, you know, I think something like 40 years ago, the government abdicated responsibility for emergency feeding and kind of pushed it onto a food pantry system that is utterly underfunded. I mean, there's something fundamentally wrong when you have a country who is not making sufficient investments in ensuring that there's access to healthy food for all people. So, I mean, I think we need to even back it up more. And I mean, I feel like there is a place for strong policy advocacy on that front to actually fundamentally shift the way that this country, and this is the moment for it. This is the moment for it. I mean, people are finally saying, what do we do next? Because that didn't work. I mean, you know, the emergency feeding system, which was entirely run with volunteer labor, could not withstand what we just went through and should not have been asked to. We should never be in that position. The only system that actually functioned throughout this was school food, because there actually was governmental investment in salaries to ensure that there was food that was getting out to folks. That's the kind of investment we need to see. And, you know, I didn't mention it, but one of the major pushes that we have is towards food as medicine, towards ensuring that access to healthy food is actually integrated into our clinical care, because that's, yeah, we can't even expect that urban agriculture, especially in a city like DC, is going to be able to actually address the food insecurity levels that we're seeing. It's just not feasible. So, you know, I appreciate what you're saying. Like, it's time to, yeah, this isn't cute. It's not cute.
Thank you, Lauren, and thank you to all of our speakers. And we are a little bit over time here, so I just want to make sure Juana has a chance to do our sort of closing remarks and reminders about upcoming things.
Thanks, Maggie, and thanks, Elena and Lauren, for ending us on a note to remind everyone what the raw core issues are here and why you all are doing the amazing work that you do, and how, you know, the importance of allies and supporters advancing that work. And thank you to all of our speakers again for participating today. As I mentioned at the beginning, this is part of a three-part series focused on our themes. This was the Urban Ag event. Next, we'll have an art event with the Washington Landscape Painters. So different topic, but definitely stay tuned for more information on that. And I also just want to mention, if you enjoyed tonight's event, please consider supporting the DC State Fair for our future events and our main fair in September. We are a all volunteer run organization, so any donations go a long way as well. So feel free to check out dcstatefair.org to donate or for more information. And please reach out to our great speakers to learn more about what you heard about today. So thank you so much and have a good evening, everyone.
Bye, thanks for coming.
Thanks for having us.
So much.
Thank you.
Bye,
You guys were awesome.
Thanks, everybody.
Alana. Bye.